So welcome to part 2 of Pythagorean Theorem, and so today we're going to look at some equations. So you've had time to practice it in class, and we're going to go ahead and do some more questions at home so that you know that you are equipped with what you need to be able to do this. So here's our first question. We're going to go through this together. So this is your example, and again, if you see, I have given you the value of your leg B and the value of leg A, and we are looking for the value of C. So you're going to go ahead and write this out. So again, we know the equation for Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We've been given the value of A, so I pop in my A, and I know it's a squared plus, and the value of B is 8, so 8 squared equals c squared. And again, you would pop this into your calculator to see what the square value of 15 is. So it's 15 times 15. And I'm just writing this out on the side so you can see what I'm doing. But you can easily pop it into your calculator, and you're going to get the value of 225 plus 8 squared, which is 64. And that will give you the value of c squared. So you go ahead and you add those two numbers up, and you get 289 equals c squared. Now we need the value of c, not c squared. So in order to get that square root, in order to get rid of it, we do the opposite of square, which is square root. And again, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And remember, when you do this to one side, it cancels those two out. So this gives you just c equals, and if you pop that into your calculator, you're going to get the value 17. So you know the value of c is 17, and you've solved for c. So now I'm going to give you an equation. Again, I want you to pause your video right now. I want you to copy this equation down, and then I want you to go ahead and solve it and press play when you're ready. Okay, welcome back. So now you can check whether you got this equation right. So we're going to start again at the top. Take a look at the equation. I've given you the value of B, and I've given you the value of A, and we're looking for the value of C. So again, my equation I know is A squared plus B squared equals c squared. My value of A is 4, so it's 4 squared, plus 3 squared equals c squared. 4 times 4, which is 4 squared, would be 16, plus 3 times 3, which is 9, equals c squared. Again, 16 plus 9 equals 25. And that is the value of c squared. But we're not looking for c squared again, we're looking for the value of c. So again, we have to go ahead and do the opposite of square, which is square root. We put both sides in square root. This will cancel each other out because they are opposites. And again, when you do the square root of 25, you're going to get 5 equals c. And that is how you solved it. So make sure you've gotten that right and you've understood it. If you haven't, I want you to try it again until you get it right. And now you'll notice with some of the equations in Pythagorean theorem that you're not always solving for the hypotenuse. Sometimes you might be solving for one of the values of A or B. So in this one, I've given it, well, it depends on you whether you call it leg A or leg B, but I've given the unknown and a value of x. So remember, or before you started this unit, we talked about algebra, and this is where your algebra skills come in helping you to solve for the unknown value. So just like you'd start any Pythagorean theorem equation, you write down what you know, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, it depends on you whether you make this value a or b. Just for today, for this equation, I'm going to go ahead and call it b. So I'm going to call this my b, and I'm going to call this my a, and I know that this is c. Hypotenuse is always c. So now a, we know the value of a is 3, because it's right there, it's 3 centimeters, and we know it's 3 centimeters squared, plus b squared. This is our unknown, so we're going to leave it as a variable, and I know that my value of c is 6 squared, so I'm going to pop that in. So again, 3 times 3 is 9. We're not changing the b, so we're just going to move it down to b squared equals, and again, 6 times 6 is 36, so we're going to pop that in. Now, just like we learned in algebra, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other. So in order to get my variable on its own, like you always want to try to get your variable on its own, in order to get the variable on its own, I need to get rid of this 9. And the way I'm going to get rid of this 9 is I'm going to subtract 9. So remember, when there is nothing written at the front, it is a plus So again, 9 minus 9 will give me 0. But whatever I do to my left side, I do to my right side. And again, I subtract 9 on this side. So 9 and 9 will cross each other out, and that will give me a value of 0 plus b squared equals 36 minus 9, which equals 27. And now I know my b squared equals 27. And again, in order to get my value of b, remember I'm not looking for b squared, I'm looking for b. I need to go ahead and put that in a square root, which will allow these two to be canceled out. And I'm going to go and put this one in a square root. And so my value of b will be equal to, again, this is a decimal number, and that's fine to have a decimal number. Always try to get the first 2 digits after the decimal. That way you have a more approximated answer. Now, I'm going to check whether I did this right. So I'm going to have to erase some of this just to be able to show you my check. And again, so actually, you know what? I'm going to try to do it on the side so you can see the work that I'm doing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a check. And this is very important. With algebra, you always check to make sure you got it right. That way, before you even ask your teacher, you know you've gotten it right and you know you're on the right track, so you don't have to worry about whether the answer was correct or not. So we go back to our original equation, and we know the original equation is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This time we're only going to use the value of a and b, and we're going to see if the value of c ends up being the same as the value c up here. So, again, a squared, we know that a was 3 squared, plus we have a value of b, which is 5.19, and we're going to go ahead and square that. And we're going to pretend we don't know the value of c squared, because we're going to see if it turns out to be the same as our hypotenuse up there. So 3 times 3 is 9, and if you square 5.19, you're going to get 26.93 equals c squared. And if you go ahead and you add those numbers up, you're going to get 35.9 equals c squared. And just like we did, we need to find the value of c and not c squared. So we're going to go ahead and you're going to put that in a square root on both sides. The square root here will cancel each other out and give you just c equals, and you'll notice your answer is going to be approximately 6. So it might be 5 point something 9, which it will be, but that is approximately 6. And if we look here, c value is 6, and up here c value is 6. That way you know you got this answer correct. Okay, so you always do a check afterwards to make sure that you have got the correct answer before you even ask, and that way you know you're on the right track. One to try by yourself. Again, I just flipped the triangle, so don't get worried. You are looking for your x value, and again, I want you to think about, I can label that x value as either a or b, because my right angle is here. I know this one is my hypotenuse. So you're going to decide whether you call it a or b. It might not be the same way that I did it, but I want you to go ahead and try it. So I'm going to pause your video right now, and then come back when you're ready. Okay, welcome back. And now I'm going to go through this equation with you, and you're going to check whether you got it right or not. So I decided to call my x value a, my value that's given to me b, and I know the one that's opposite to my right angle is always going to be c. So again, starting at the top, write out my equation as I know it. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to pop in the values that I know. So I don't know my value for a, so I'm going to leave that as a variable. I'm going to pop in my b because I do know it. They do give it to me. It's 12, and it's 12 squared. And I know my value for c, which is 20, and it's 20 squared. So again, we leave a on its own. We do 12 times 12, which is 144. And I do 20 times 20, which is 400. And again, just as algebra, I need to get my variable. This is my variable. I need to get it on its own, and that means I need to somehow get rid of this number right here. And I know that the only way to get rid of a number like that is to subtract that number, which will give me a value of 0. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write that in. So 144 minus 144, and whatever I do to my left-hand side, I do to my right-hand side. I don't know if I'm going to have enough space here. I hope I do. And yes, I did. Okay, so I go ahead and I pop that in. I know this will cross out because it will turn into a value of 0. and I know my a squared is going to be equal to, and again, 400 minus 144 is going to end up being 256. And again, I want to get rid of that so I'm going to put a square root over both sides. The square and the square root will cancel each other out and leave me with just the value of a. And if I go ahead and I pop that into my calculator and I get my square root of that number, I get 16. So I just solved for a. A is equal to 16. Again, like I said earlier, always do a check to verify. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my check. So again, I know my equation again is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to pretend I don't know the value of c, so I'm going to pop in my value of a, which I figured out to be 16, and again 16 squared, and I know my value of b, which is 12 squared equals c squared, and so 16 times 16 is going to be 256, plus 12 times 12 is 144, and that's going to equal c squared. So when I add these two numbers up, I end up with the value of 400 equals c squared. And again, in order to get rid of this square, I only want the value of c, not c squared. I go ahead and I square root both sides. These two things, the square and the square root cross out, and I'm left with c equals, and if I go ahead and pop that into the calculator, I'm going to end up with 20. And you'll notice right now that my c value here is exactly the c value here, so I know I got my answer correct. Okay, so again, make sure that you always do the theorem and then you go ahead and you check. And sorry, I just forgot one thing here and I want to add this in. Please always make sure that you put your units in when you're answering the full answer so you know that your units are correct. So therefore, my value of a is going to be 16 meters, and I know that that is correct. Okay, so again, if you didn't get this right, I want you to try it again and make sure you've gotten it before you let this go for tonight, and I hope that you're totally prepared for tomorrow.